With 28 years of service to country and community, Sergeant Frank has plenty of life experience to share. When his service was complete, he wasn't satisfied with retirement. Sergeant Frank founded Adopt a Cop USA, a nonprofit organization that mentors kids with law enforcement officers in our schools. His vision is to change the perception of law enforcement one child at a time. This show covers a wide range of topics with people who make positive impacts on others' lives. Tonight we are talking to Grace Heidish, who we have nicknamed Amazing Grace because she is so, amazing. Grace is a teenager forced to join the Police Explorers because her parents made her brother go. She ended up liking it and says it helped her become the person she is today. It is my honor to introduce the one and only Sergeant Frank.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Sergeant Frank Show. And today we have our co-host,
The Bird Dog.
And our special guest is Amazing Grace Heidish.
Hello.
Grace, tell us how you came involved with this whole Boynton Beach Police Department situation.
So I became involved with the Boynton Beach Police Explorers after my family made my brother go. So subsequently, I got brought along with him. And then it turns out that I really, really loved it and enjoyed it. And it was something that they could have never really gotten me to stop doing, even after my brother left the post. And that was when I met Sergeant Frank. And it was just awesome. It was different for me because I had never really had anyone there that was positive and trying to, help me become a better leader and a better follower even and just, learn how to deal with what happens in life and not let it bog you down all the time and just keep going.
What was the mindset of the other kids in the program?
It for the most part, it was all kind of the same. We all wanted to work towards eventually going into law enforcement as careers, and it was a lot of everyone really worked as a team, and eventually it got to the point where everyone really acted like one unit. And I know when I was in there, it was awesome because we all kind of just knew how each other worked and where everyone's strengths and weaknesses were, and we just kind of figured out whatever we needed to do and we got it done. So that was pretty cool because we all would just work together, and you don't really find that often now. At least I don't think in my generation. You hear group project and you run away.
Yeah, so you were basically forced to go. And when you went in that first day, what were you thinking?
Wow. Well, my first day, see, I didn't know I had to go either. They kind of just were like, "We're gonna go drop your brother off." So I wore flip flops. Um, Definitely not the right shoe. And I just remember this kid named Mario was in there, and he was just like full, very like the intimidating, um, just like one of the very intimidating officers. And he wasn't even an officer yet. He was just like the lieutenant, I think, at the time. And I was like, oh boy, this will be great. Here I am in flip flops, and Mario's running around, and you know, it was pretty intimidating. And then after that first meeting, I wore sneakers, and it got better. Um, and then I don't know, I just fell in love with it. So
So I think that particular post commander, I guess you could say, or captain of the post, the Explorer post, he went on to join the military, and I think he's still in the military. So,
hmm
that kind of gave him a little bit of structure that he needed because he wasn't ready for that type of discipline. In the school system that you were in at that time, Did you have something similar to Police Explorers where they were motivating you, where they were educating you and giving you the self-discipline principles that you learned in the Police Explorers?
No, high school, I was getting knives pulled on me on the school bus and, desks thrown my way. So it was, it wasn't not the school I was at. It was they didn't have anything like that. In any school I've been in, there's never been anything like that really. You have the random teacher that, pushes you a little bit harder than all the other ones and wants you to do well, but that's about it. It's nothing structured or available to students, in my opinion.
Do you think that's a necessary component for our students today to be forced to do something even though it's something they don't want to do?
Um, I think so. Just because if you don't ever do it, you won't know if you actually like it or not. Because that was kind of the case with me. It was I had never really thought about law enforcement at all, or given a second thought to it, and I didn't think I would like it, and I did it and stuck with it, and then I fell in love with it, and I fell in love with the program because it did provide stability, which I really, really needed in that time frame of my life. So I definitely think kids should be forced to do stuff they don't necessarily want to do because it can yield better results than they could ever imagined, for sure.
Do you think the concept of competing builds more character than it destroys? Because we have so many schools out there with fifth place trophies and participation ribbons. Do you think the fact that in a foot race, for example, there's only going to be one winner? Do you think that's a lesson that the kids that don't come in first need to learn at an early age so they can deal with the stressors in life as they become adults or older teenagers in our society?
I definitely think so. Just because you're never gonna be the best at everything you do. You're never gonna win first place every time, and you're gonna lose, and you're gonna fall, and you're gonna be tested, and it is really how you respond to it that makes or breaks you. Because if you just if you fall down and you never get back up, then that's on you. But to learn to keep getting up and to keep pushing for what you want no matter what is really important in my opinion. So
Bird Dog, when you were coaching kids in sports and baseball and soft pitch softball, I believe you called it, or is it fast pitch softball?
It's
Do
fast
you
pitch.
think fast pitch? So those kids, would you say the majority of the time that type of sporting events like that or practices taught kids that you're not always going to hit a home run, but you got to keep on swinging? Do you think those lessons help prepare those kids to be more resilient adults in our country?
Absolutely. You got to get your kids into sports. It does a number of different things. It keeps kids from, getting into what other kids do when they don't have anything to do. They go out and they find, bad things that they shouldn't be getting into to get into. But it also teaches them a bunch of different character traits and things that they need to learn to be resilient adults. It's something that I did with my kids, and I don't know if that's the perfect solution, but I'm sure it was a little bit of the discipline that I had as well. But my kids turned out pretty dang good, and my whole life was sports. Everything. It's like I spent probably, if I wasn't working, I was at a sporting event or I was doing something that my kids wanted to do, and I never forced them to do anything. I always told them that that if you're gonna do this, you're gonna finish it through. But if you didn't want to do it the next year, you didn't have to do it.
So in your childhood, I know you grew up in Texas. Was your family fairly strict, and did they make you do things you didn't want to do? And how did that affect you as being a police officer in the future?
My case was a little bit different because my dad, worked all the time and he was never ever around. And my mom had four of us to deal with, and three of us were, brothers. So we did a lot together, but they didn't force us to do anything. They did put me into sports, and I think that's what made me do that with my kids. but I didn't do a ton. I learned about farming mostly because we lived on 80 acres, and my grandfather was a chicken farmer. One of my grandfathers, he did eggs, so he had like a million chickens and eggs, and I got to play in there and help out. And then my other grandfather had a dairy farm, so it was like, I was always out in the outdoors, basically in the outside doing things. And of course, back when I grew up, because I'm so dang old, video games weren't that weren't weren't really there for me.
So Bird Dog and Grace, you're saying that because of hard work, you guys developed a resiliency strain in your adulthood that served you well when dealing with obstacles in your lives.
I say yes. In
Yeah,
fact,
definitely.
my dad made me start working when I was 14 years old. Now he was a superintendent on construction sites, like for big buildings and stuff. So I'm out there digging ditches at 14 and working my butt off, and I absolutely hated it. I hated it with a passion, but he made me work, and by him doing that, it turned me into a better person because I learned that you have to earn what you get.
Right. And Grace, you have a similar situation. You started working fairly young and you accelerated into a management position pretty rapidly. Do you think that's mainly because so many of our kids are not learning those skills that you learned at an early age, whether it was police explorers, to make decisions, to think, to be empathetic about people's thoughts, and to work hard? Do you think that's why you accelerated in the management areas that you were tasked with?
I think so. Um, I always kind of go into things looking at it as I don't want to be a cashier for the rest of my life, so I better, you know, give it everything that I have so I can learn as much as possible and um, progress upwards. I don't I don't really like to be stuck somewhere too long, especially once I get the hang of whatever I'm doing. I want to learn more and keep moving, and so I think that definitely played a large part in it, um, in my promotions, and it was fun for a
What do you
while.
think? What do you think about the physical fitness part of the police explorers and law enforcement in general? Do you think that when your posts had to do push-ups or march or stand at attention and all that stuff, do you think that creates a beginning of self-discipline that you need to have when you're dealing with tasks that aren't always the most fun to do? Like, I know in law enforcement, doing police reports was the least fun thing to do, but chasing the bad guys was the most fun. So, do you think that type of training at an early age instilled those qualities that are needed for adulthood and dealing with obstacles? Because when I was asking you guys about the sports questions, Babe Ruth kind of popped into my head because, and Danny, you're a big baseball person, so the he had a high number of home runs, isn't that correct?
Yes,
But why did he also have a very high number of?
strikeouts.
Right. So here you have a guy who, everybody talks about the home runs, but nobody talks about the strikeouts. And in life, you're going to strike out a lot more times than you're going to hit a home run. And I think that's something we're failing to teach our kids in school and in our society. And that's why we're having such a big problem with, I think, drugs, I think with teenage suicide, and I think a lot of the texting problem and social media is really hurting even though we're going to advertise this program on social media, a cell phone is a tool, just like a hammer, and a hammer could be used for committing a murder, or a hammer could be used to build a house. So either way, it's how you use the hammer. The hammer has no feelings. The hammer has no thought process. The hammer's a hammer. It sits until a human being picks it up and does something with it. So I think the big problem with our society is we're we're evil. We're saying that guns are evil. We're saying cell phones are evil. We're saying TV are evil. We're saying video games are evil. All those things have a place in our society somewhere. It's just how we utilize them that I think makes the biggest difference. What do you guys say about that?
Well, I have little siblings, and I know Danny, you've got kids, and um, I know from just being around my siblings when they've been on, when they're allowed to be on technology for too long. They misbehave. They're, mean to each other. They're always fighting. And then, you take all the iPads and phones away and stack them up on the counter and kick them out the door to go, play hockey in the front or throw the football around, and they come back and they're like changed kids. And I think a lot of it is just misdirected energy, because the computers and the phones and stuff, it's mindless. You don't really have to do anything. You kind of just sit there, and you're not really channeling your effort or energy into anything. And then, once you actually start doing that, because I mean, exercise releases all the happy endorphins, and it makes me not as stressed. I know for sure. And the same thing with kids, because they need to go outside and play and be kids. And
So last night, I get a call from my son. He's 33, 34 now. And he calls me and says, "Hey, Dad, I got a flat tire. Can you come and pick us up?" I'm like, "Sure." So I go to pick him up, and he's like, "Well, I'm going to try to limp the car back to the house. It's not completely flat." He had like a piece of wire stuck in the tire, so it wasn't completely flat. But anyway, so he asked me to take his girl and his kids, what are my grandkids, to the pizza place because they had ordered pizza. So I'm cruising along, and Hayden is my grandson that we just took turkey hunting. And Mama was telling me about how Hayden got in trouble. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, what happened?" So apparently, Hayden is big in video games. So he was told by his father to get off the video game, and he got mad and threw a fit. So his father sent him to his room, which is awesome. He didn't just let him do it. So he goes in his room, and he kicks a hole in the wall. And he takes a bat and he starts beating up his bed. I was like, now he plays baseball, that's why he has a bat in there. So I was like, "Oh my goodness, Hayden, what the heck are you doing? What's happening?" And he goes, "I just got upset." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You got upset so much that you wanted to damage things?" So the great thing about this story is, of course, now he's not allowed to play video games. His dad took his Xbox away completely, forever. And I know I didn't tell this whole story yet. So his dad and mom are split, and my son is with mama now. But anyway, so at his house, he's not allowed to do it either, and they're gonna make him do some work out over here at my house, actually, so, for punishment for acting up. But if they didn't do stuff like that, this kid could turn into a very violent person and get used to being angry and taking it out on other things and people. So, but some parents don't do stuff like that, and that's where the problem comes in.
What about the story where the officer was murdered by his son because he took his video game away?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
that was crazy.
I mean that you would that you I mean that this electronic device, without a brain, without feelings, without any love it can give you, empowered this young man to do the most horrific thing, to take his, not only take a life, but take his own father's life. That's a problem.
Yeah, that's a big problem. And that's probably because, and I would think that a police officer, being a disciplinarian in the first place, would be on top of things. But I mean, that just shows you that you can't know what's going to happen in these kids' minds, because he had to be a disciplinarian with his kid all the time, and the kid just finally, I guess, exploded and took some extreme action. But
Or maybe they weren't a disciplinarian from the very beginning, and
well,
once they
I was going to
once
say that,
yeah.
but I wasn't sure because if he's a police officer, you would.
Well, we don't. Yeah, like you said, we don't know. We have no idea. But if they did it from the very beginning, like your granddaughter, if she tries to run into the street, a busy traffic street, and you say no, and she still tries to pull away from you, and you correct her by patting her on the butt, a little tap, she's going to think, well, I shouldn't do that because I was corrected. Now I know that if I do something that's not smart, I'm going to be corrected. I'm not going to do that again. So you save your granddaughter's life. Well, there's some people in our country who are like, oh, you should never put your hands on a kid. And 99% of the time, you don't have to do to that extreme level. But I can tell you as a child that, I mean, my parents were extreme. Their disciplinary actions were way off the chart as far as DCF goes today. But you know what? I learned to know when to say something, when not to say something, and I knew what behavior was the right behavior because I was corrected. And we're not doing that with our children at a young age. And for my kids, I just had to raise my voice. I had a pretty big voice, and they knew that when that change of that tone came out, that soon after that was going to be a problem. So we better stop now before it got to that level.
It's just like paddling in school. Both of us got paddled when we were in school, and that corrected the behavior. And now they don't do anything, and it's just turning, going the other way now.
I would love to see the statistics for school shootings back when we were kids in school compared to today, with their zero discipline and the fact that we pulled prayer and patriotism out of our schools as compared to 20 or 30 years ago when we were in school. At least there was some kind of a structure, at least there was some kind of guide. Whether you believe that or not is irrelevant. It's the facts. And I think that we're letting our society, we're letting the tail wag the dog way too much and not make the decisions that built this country in the first place. And Grace, I know that you were in a school system that was fairly, I think, strict at first. Didn't you, in your elementary school? Didn't you go to a school that was fairly strict?
Well, I was homeschooled until third grade, so
So very strict.
very strict. Yeah. Um,
Your
and
mom's
then
gonna kill me when she hears this.
no, I was no, but I don't know. I always wanted to get up and do all my work before she even woke up, so I could just play the rest of the day, and she just had to sit there and check it all. But once I went to actual elementary school, I remember it being a lot stricter when I was younger, and then as it progressed, it just got, you know, like you can't say anything to anyone, or else their parents will get upset and come in and yell at the teacher for yelling at their kid because their kid was like throwing paper balls all through the room and screaming and being a disruption. So elementary was definitely harder on us, and then it just deteriorated from there.
Well, I think in my short career in law enforcement and the Bird Dog short career in law enforcement of 25 years, that we could pretty accurately advise that if the parents aren't disciplining their children at home and they go to school and there's no, and the school has to correct some behavior, that responsibility needs to go back home. And you can't expect a teacher who has 40 or something kids in a classroom to be the parent. Some parenting has to happen at home. Teaching needs to happen in school. And then when you go to work, your supervisors have to deal with that as well. And the law enforcement leadership that we've seen over the years deteriorate is something that comes from, and it's a social problem. It's not just law enforcement or firefighters in the military. It's the fact that our kids are not growing as resilient, growing up to be resilient adults, because we're not growing resilient kids, because we're not instilling those necessary character traits that we received in our day and age. So together, the only way to make this thing work in a very positive way and bring our country, put the United back in the United States, is to everybody work together as a team and stop working against each other. And that's the biggest problem I see in our society today.
Yeah, we got many problems, but you're right. That is one of the bigger ones. So I got to getting off the subject a little bit. I got a question for Grace. I want to know what you thought of Sergeant Frank the first time you met him.
Oh
um,
boy.
oh boy. I was, and it's funny because I don't like now. It's just I laugh that I ever thought this, but Sorry. um,
Put you
Uh-oh.
on the spot
but
here.
well, he was he was really intimidating to me at first, just because he's a tall guy and he walks around and he like you know that he has he looks like very authoritative and I was intimidated, and then now that I know him, it's funny to ever think that I was intimidated. But um yeah, I don't know, he was just very, he presents himself in a way that was very professional, and he has a voice that carries, and he always talks with his hands, and so
So how long did it take for you to warm up to him?
um after I went to boot camp from hell, and it was just me and him stuck there all week.
Well, that's right.
After that,
You got a little one-on-one time there, huh?
Well,
yeah.
not really, but
Well,
I think you got to explain the entire Explorer boot camp
uh,
situation for you,
yeah.
and how that transpired, because that's really where Grace changed her entire, I think, thought process about law enforcement and police and explorers, and how to really overcome. I mean, because that was a serious obstacle situation. So let's take a few minutes to really talk about how that all occurred and why. Go ahead and tell your side of that story.
Yeah, so that was a fun week, but it started out, there was, I think, 8 of us in the post, which was pretty much the entire post at that time, and I did not hold any rank at the time. And as the weeks got closer to us actually going to this boot camp, like one person would drop out, and then the next person dropped out, and then the next person dropped out, and then my sergeant dropped out, and then our corporal dropped out, and then it got to the point where it was just me, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great.
Why do you think they were dropping out?
I don't know, this is just, to say it nicely, just probably because they didn't want to go, because they were apprehensive of it, or
So y'all had a heads up of what it was going to entail?
well, we knew going into it that it was going to be, up at, I think they got us up at 5 to do PT every day for an hour and something, and we knew what we were getting into for sure. They gave us a big packet, and we went over it in full detail, and so I don't know. In my opinion, it seemed like the first few people were just kind of afraid and scared of going, so they dropped out, and then once your sergeant, who's supposed to be head of the post, and your corporals and everyone starts dropping out, it's kind of hard to motivate people to actually go do it then. Because if your leadership doesn't want to do it, then there's something going on there.
So do you think they were good leaders?
No, I don't really think they knew how to lead. And part of it, I think, was just age and like maturity levels, and just not understanding how important a leadership role is, because it really, it can either make or break a team, for sure. So that was the first issue, was everyone bailed on me.
And just to break in for a second, Danny, so Bird Dog, all the other police Explorer posts send like a minimum of like 5 to 10 kids to this event. So there was probably 60 explorers for this week-long boot camp from posts all over Palm Beach County and Martin County.
It was I think when we ended it was 88, because 2 kids left during the week.
So you have and every one of those posts had, so when all these people from the Boynton post bailed, Grace still decided to go by herself. She was the only explorer at that boot camp that didn't have another person from her team with her.
Wow. Now was it team events there, or was it just individual?
Well, they broke us all up. into to groups anyway. So I mean I had a team, I had a group, but it was just it was I don't know. I mean, I wasn't really at that point in my explorer's career, I wasn't really close with many of the people in my post anyway. But it was just having that familiarity with at least someone. uh,
Wait a minute. So your brother bailed too?
he didn't know he was done with the he had left already. He was so I
Yeah,
think
he
the
was long gone by then.
Oh, wait a minute. So you were forced to go. Did your brother want to go, or did they force him to?
they forced him to go, but he was doing hockey at ice hockey at the time, and it was just not, you know, that was what he loved to do. So he made the decision, like it just, and it was his senior year and whatever. So, but yeah, I stayed, and the I remember too. It was funny because I back well, I still get sick often ish. Not so often anymore, but when I get sick, I have a lot of like breathing issues. So I went into the boot camp already sick as well. That was fun because the I would have to go to the medic people like every day and just do my inhaler in front of them and then walk back and then so it was a lot of and as the week went on it got better. The first few days they're trying to petrify you and um break as many kids as they can so they have more time to build them back up. And I just remember for me, the one thing that I kept thinking was, I can't quit because sergeant's out here getting attacked by sand fleas, and I'm the only one out here, and I can't, I have to do it for him. And later on, I really realized that, well, yes, I didn't want to let him down. It was also mostly it was because I knew that I just couldn't quit, and I didn't want to let myself down. And the whole week I was just repeating in my head that they're only doing this to make us better, and and that was really it was really true. I really felt that at the end because there was there was a lot of disasters, at least for me through that whole thing. My family, my stepmom kind of tried to sabotage my boot camp experience attending.
Tell us what happened with that.
Yeah, so and I remember it was right after we did taps, so all 80 of us were standing out in this field about to go in to eat. Uh, Sergeant called or it was what did they call him? Oh,
Drill sergeant,
senior.
DI. Yeah.
No, but the head DI, we called him senior, and he called me out of formation where I was with my group, and my stepmom had sent a care package for me for a week boot camp that we had specific instructions: do not contact your kids, don't send anything, don't do anything. And so yeah. And then inside the care package was like a magazine about why weed is great and not a problem. And so they made me sit in a circle with all the girls that were in my bunk, and I had to read this article about marijuana to them at the top of my lungs while trying not to start crying and run away. And I don't even remember what she wrote on the note, but she wrote this really passive aggressive note to me. They made me wear it around my neck like a necklace, and it was great. And then it was really cool because one of the DIs in my he was like assigned to my group. His name was DI Razul, and he pulled me aside and he was like, what's the story? Because I'm sure I did not look like I was upset, but I mean, I still remember my hands were shaking. Like I really wanted to go just choke out my stepmom. As terrible as that sounds. And I explained to him that she makes really poor choices in her life, and you know would I don't know what the heck drugs she does, but I knew she was doing more than marijuana, and it was something that I had been constantly battling with her at home, and my family just saying, this is wrong. She's got 3 kids that are, at the time they were like, I think probably 5, 6, and 7, and they're all 14 months apart. And it was just, to me, it was something that I couldn't get past, because I was like, what if she takes them with her to buy drugs or something, and something bad happens and they're in the car, or what if she's high on something and she drives with them, or just stuff with their safety always really, really bothered me. And so I explained that to him, and then they told Senior, and I didn't have to wear the note around my neck anymore. And um, they really, helped me. That was when it was cemented in my mind that that was wrong and that shouldn't be happening. And I knew it was wrong, but I was not capable of seeing it to the full extent at the time. And they really, really, you know, just said, "You're really, strong for having to deal with that, and it's wrong, and not following in that same pattern is, amazing." And but they also said, "You probably need to get out of there." And I was like, "Yeah."
Well,
And
thank God you had some positive role models in your life, or you might just very well gone down that road as well.
oh yeah, definitely. And it was, I mean, it was after this boot camp. I think it was the last week in June that we went, and I moved out the that in July 27th I left. So it was like a month, and then I was like, you know what? Because I tried talking to him and nothing worked, and I was like, I don't want to be around it. So I left. And but if I hadn't gone through what I did at boot camp, I don't know if I think it could have really turned out differently, for sure. Because I knew what I had to do, but I didn't have the courage to do it and act on it.
Yeah, now marijuana is becoming like a topic across the country, and they're trying to legalize it.
Yeah, and
And my opinion is that it's bad for you. That differs from a lot of people's opinions, but based on my life experiences with dealing with people that are on that marijuana, and knowing people in my personal life that are on marijuana, you can see the different attitudes and how they act, and you can they're just not um, completely functional people.
mhm.
So with this big parade across the United States to make marijuana legal, I think is like the biggest bad decision that anybody's ever going to make.
Well, and for me, everyone that I worked in I worked in restaurants, and my personal experience is like every single person that I have ever known to smoke marijuana has done some type of other drugs. And it ranges from, it's all up and down the scale of you know, oh, I just go into my parents' medicine cabinets and take whatever pills they have in there, to, doing heroin or cocaine. And so for me it was just like,
It makes you lead to bad choices.
yeah. And now they're lacing marijuana with like fentanyl and everything, and it's just, it's a disaster waiting to happen, in my opinion. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's definitely an issue, I think.
So when you
So
become president of the United States, Grace, are you going to fix that?
yeah, I'll try. you know. Um I'll try. I think I'm a ways off from that, but maybe we'll get there.
Gotta reach for the sky. Big goals,
Yep.
big goals.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show today. I think as we wrap up, I can't tell you how much that watching you from the first time you came into the post to where you are today was such an incredible honor for me to be a small part of that situation, and knowing the obstacles that you had to deal with and you fighting through those really was an inspiration to me as well. And I think a lot of the other explorers that knew you could appreciate that and were inspired as well. And I think that your younger siblings will look upon that as well someday and realize the things that you had to do to make a better world for not only yourself, but for them in the future. So, Bird Dog, what say you about all that situation?
Well, I'm very proud of Grace. You know, I was around a little bit. I wasn't, you know, part of the Explorer program every day, but I did come in and do some guest appearances a lot. And you know, I knew of Grace. I knew she. You know, I knew that she was. You know, what you made like lieutenant or captain or something like that. I can't remember
Yep.
which one you were, but I knew she was a leader, and you could tell she was a leader. She acted like a leader. I mean, it was impressive, and to hear the stories about you from Sergeant Frank, and then to hear you tell your story, it's amazing that you know what you came from to who you are today, and I just got to say that I'm super proud of you for becoming the person you've become so far.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I always tell everyone I've had awesome, amazing role models, and Sergeant Frank can, you know, deny and say, you know, whatever he likes to say, but a large part of, you know, where I'm at today is because of him. And there've been times where, you know, he's said, I just want to help, you know, kids and work with kids, and I'm a living testament to him already doing that. And, you know, I'm sure there's been millions or hundreds and thousands of other kids that he's already impacted just from, you know, being a police officer for 25 years. So, you know, I thank you for, you know, being there for me, and you're awesome.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that the whole idea from the get go was to help other people do the same thing and inspire people like yourself that in your future you will do the same thing that was done for you, you know, to pass it along, to pass it forward, to instill those character traits that we need in our country so desperately today, now more than ever. And with more people like Grace coming on board that have had positive experiences with law enforcement that want to do good for other people, we can all work together and we can get this ship uprighted and back on track and back on course. So again, you know, you're an inspiration to so many, and Bird Dog, you're an inspiration to so many. I think if we just continue to build our ranks with people like you guys, we can make a big difference. So Bird Dog, tell people how they can get involved and how they can help our program move forward.
Well, you can help our program by liking, sharing, and following us on our social media platforms, which we kind of, you know, we love to hate. If you want to see what we're doing, you can go to our website, which I think is awesome. It's www.aacusa.org. And some people can't figure that out, and they're like, "What does Mayakusa mean?" they try they try to make a word out of the My AAC USA, so which it basically stands for, you know, My Adopt a Cop. That's the AAC, and then USA.org. But anyway, we have Facebook, which is Adopt a Cop USA official site, and make sure you go to the official site when there's a couple others out there that are using the name. And we have a YouTube channel, Adopt a Cop USA official site as well, which is pretty awesome because that's where all these podcasts are, and that's where all our millions of followers are. But you know, the thing is we're a 501c3 program, so we can take donations and you can write them off on your taxes, and we really need some help with that. We need, like, you know, if you want to donate $1 million or $1 billion, we're good with it. It'll help a ton of kids, but We have no paid employees. In fact, Sergeant Frank pretty much funds most of it right now, other than the donations that we get. But you can go, if you want to donate, you can go right to our website. Right on the front page, there's the donate buttons that pop out when you scroll your mouse over them. So it's real easy to do. What else do we have? I think that covered it, right?
We have raffles and stuff also to raise funding for our program.
Yeah. I forgot about the raffles. Right now we have a great Florida Keys vacation. It's for a family of 4, and it's a week, or what is it, 5 or 6 days maybe, down. Yeah, okay, so it's in the Florida Keys. It's 2 days of fishing on our charter boat that's docked at the Faro Blanco Resort. That's where you'll be staying as well. So you get free lodging. You get $500 cash for a day of shopping down in Key West or relaxing or whatever you want to do. A couple days of relaxation, a couple days of fishing, a marathon turtle hospital tour, which is really cool if you haven't ever done that. So it's $10 a ticket, which isn't bad for that vacation, and that vacation is probably going to cost us around $5,000. So it's a pretty good raffle ticket. We're giving away a Glock 43X as well. I think that's one of the tickets that Grace has purchased, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's for a Glock 43X, and it's $5 a ticket. So you can get those right online as well. Right on the front page, it says donate to our raffles, and you can go in there. It's very user friendly, and pay via PayPal or a credit card. But we always have raffles going on. We're about to put one out for a cell phone. So you get a free cell phone, whatever cell phone you want, and a year service, which I think is going to be pretty cool. Keep an eye out for that one coming out. But that's about it, Frank.
And we also want to thank Grace for her contributions, because she's bought raffle tickets and she's made donations. And what's really cool is here's somebody who's kind of on a limited budget. I mean, she doesn't make a lot of money, and she still donates to our program. And I think that just shows a lot about her character. And we need more people that have that heart and are empathetic to our cause, or sympathetic, or both. That it's tough out there, and we're competing against some pretty big giant nonprofits out there that aren't doing the same type of work that we are and making the difference that we are. So please help us move our program into a bigger arena, so we can help a lot more kids, police officers, and obviously our citizens. Thank you very much, and we look forward to doing another show with amazing Grace, with the next stage of her life, where she puts the United back in the United States of America.
Listen, young one, it's not cool to be a thug. There is nothing good about going selling drugs. The money don't mean nothing when you're harming everyone, and you can get killed bringing pain to your mom. Take a legal substance and you can OT. Overdose from nasty chemicals in the streets. Live a happy life.